Tonight, President Biden calling for a gas tax holiday, but it's likely to face opposition on Capitol Hill. The president asking Congress for the 3-month pause, which would trim 18 cents off a gallon of gas and 24 cents for diesel. It's the most significant effort yet by the administration to try and bring down record gas prices, and it comes less than 2 weeks before the July 4th weekend. So is it likely to pass? And if it does, how early could Americans see relief at the pump? Also tonight, the Senate one step closer to passing the most significant change to gun laws in 3 decades. Top Republican Senator Mitch McConnell even voicing his support for the bill, which is aiming to prevent another tragedy like Uvalde. In that city, more anger over the errors made by police that day, including the officer who was restrained while trying to run into the classroom to save his dying wife. The deadly earthquake in Afghanistan, more than 1,000 people killed after the 5.9 magnitude quake struck near the country's border with Pakistan. The urgent search underway for survivors. Dangerous heat, millions under alert from Texas to Georgia and up to New York. Record temperatures possible across the South. Tips tonight on how to stay cool. Pulled from the flames, the new video showing a firefighter climbing through the window of a burning home. The heart-stopping moment he came back out with a 3-year-old boy. And memories delivered. The woman receiving a postcard from her parents years after they died. The treasure trove she and other family members then found at the post office. Top story starts right now. Good evening. I'm Gabe Gutierrez in for Tom. Tonight, President Biden is trying to ease your pain at the pump. The president now asking Congress for a 3-month federal gas tax holiday. If passed, an NBC News estimate finds drivers of sedans would save almost $3 each time they fill up. Pickup trucks with 36-gallon tanks are looking at a savings close to $6.50. Right now, the average price of a gallon of gas is stalling at around $5. Americans are looking for relief and fast. AAA predicting more than 47 million people will travel by car over the July 4th weekend. However, the president's proposal is likely to face major challenges in Congress. So let's get right to Kristen Welker, who leads us off from Washington.
Under pressure with gas prices hovering around $5 a gallon ahead of the July 4th holiday, President Biden today calling for a suspension in the gas tax.
I fully understand that a gas tax holiday alone is not going to fix the problem, but it will provide families some immediate relief.
He's asking Congress to hit pause on the federal gas tax for 3 months. The government taxes gas at 18 cents a gallon. Much of that money goes to the Highway Trust Fund, which pays for road construction. White House officials project the president's proposal would cost $10 billion, but insist they'll find the funds elsewhere. The president also said prices could come down as much as $1 a gallon if states suspend their gas tax and oil companies increase refining capacity. Drivers expressing mixed reaction.
Any little bit helps. Like to see more, but I'll take a little bit if we can get it.
Even in dollar store, you cannot buy anything for 18 cents.
Gas prices are down 6 cents from the record high set last week, thanks to a drop in global oil prices. But some top economists warn a gas tax holiday could add to inflation. Many Republicans blasted the move.
This ineffective stunt will join President Biden's other ineffective stunt on gas prices.
Even some Democrats lukewarm.
I support it, but I think we need to be honest about it. It's not going to show a dramatic change in gas prices unless states follow suit.
And it's not clear there are enough votes to pass it. Speaker Pelosi today saying we will see where the consensus lies. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell grilled by lawmakers after raising rates for the 3rd time this year to fight inflation.
Chair Powell, will gas prices go down as a result of your interest rate increase?
I would not think so, no.
And the chairman even acknowledged rate hikes could trigger a recession.
It's not our intended outcome at all, but it's certainly a possibility.
And Kristen Welker joins us now live from the White House. So, Kristen, the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, will meet tomorrow with the CEOs of big oil companies. What can we expect?
That's right, Gabe. The Energy Secretary will push for more refining capacity, even saying today the president could invoke the Defense Production Act. And Granholm says she will pressure the oil companies not to absorb any savings from a gas tax holiday, so the money instead goes to everyday drivers. Gabe.
Kristen, thank you. We want to bring in now Pippa Stevens. She's an energy reporter for CNBC. And Pippa, we just heard in Kristen's report that critics of the administration are calling this a stunt. So would consumers actually feel the impact of this gas tax suspension?
Well, Gabe, a lot goes into the price of gasoline, but experts do say this would likely be felt immediately. However, it is such a small portion of the overall price consumers are paying at the pump that it won't amount to any type of very large savings. Remember, the federal gas tax is 18 cents for a regular gallon of gasoline. And while Biden is also asking states to suspend their taxes, with many states now averaging more than $5 per gallon, 18 cents off isn't a whole lot. And many also say that this temporary move is merely a Band-Aid for a much larger issue.
Yeah, Pippa, so a small impact, but not a game changer. But if Congress does suspend the gas tax, and again, there's no guarantee that'll happen, as you said, it would only be for 3 months. So is there any indication that gas prices will be lower in the fall on the other side of this gas tax pause?
Well, this really gets to the heart of it. And in the commodities market, we talk a lot about how the cure for high prices is high prices. And that essentially means that prices need to rise enough to curb demand and rebalance markets. So a temporary suspension of the gas tax could actually do long-term damage, since it keeps demand elevated without targeting why prices are so high to begin with. And that's because of tight supply. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was the latest catalyst that pushed prices up, but the market was already tight ahead of that. So bottom line here is that suspending the gas tax is an action, but not a solution.
So, Pippa, let's zoom out and talk about the economy as a whole. Fed Chair Jerome Powell told the Senate Banking Committee that the Fed is not trying to, quote, provoke a recession, but that it's a possibility. Does it seem like things are starting to stabilize?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve is walking a fine line here, and they've taken aggressive measures to curb rampant inflation, which is at the highest in 40 years. And so last week they raised rates by 0.75 of a percentage point, which was the highest since 1994. So basically, they're trying to achieve what's known as a soft landing, which is when policy tightens without severe economic circumstances like a recession. And Chair Powell said that this will be difficult to achieve, but he also said that tighter monetary policy will be an effective tool against inflation, and he thinks the economy is well positioned to handle higher rates. But for the time being, we're kind of here, Gabe, in wait-and-see mode.
Pippa Stevens with CNBC. Pippa, thanks. Now to Capitol Hill, where Senate lawmakers could soon pass the most important gun safety legislation in decades. It's far short of what Democrats wanted, but it has significant Republican support. Garrett Haake is at the Capitol.
After weeks of negotiations, the Senate on the verge of passing the most significant changes to gun laws in 30 years. The bill clearing a significant hurdle last night with the help of 14 Republican votes.
On this vote, the yeas are 64.
How important was it for Congress to prove this issue wasn't too big for you?
If this time, after Uvalde, we threw up our hands and said we can't do anything, I just think it would be a crisis of democracy.
Senator John Cornyn, spurred to action by the horrific school shooting in his home state last month, was booed at the Texas GOP convention recently as he tried to explain the bill.
Well, if I listened to all of the critics, I wouldn't get much done.
But getting backup today from the Senate's top Republican.
This time, the Democrats came our way. The result is a product I'm proud to support.
The compromise bill nearly derailed over what's called the boyfriend loophole, negotiators finally agreeing that serious dating partners who have been convicted of domestic abuse cannot purchase a firearm. The bill also incentivizes states to pass red flag laws to temporarily take away guns from people courts deem dangerous. It also includes enhanced federal background checks for gun buyers under 21. The suspects in the Buffalo and Uvalde shootings were both 18 years old. There's also $15 billion in new funding for mental health programs and school security upgrades.
It doesn't focus on criminals. My view is we should be focused on criminals who commit these crimes.
This bill will have the votes it needs when it gets to the House, although House Republican leaders are whipping against it. It will have at least one House Republican voting in favor, Tony Gonzalez, who represents the city of Uvalde. Gabe.
Garrett, thanks. We turn now to breaking news in the Uvalde massacre. The Uvalde school superintendent just announcing that Police Chief Pete Arredondo has been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. It comes after the state's top cop blamed him for the delayed response to that shooting that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. Sam Brock is in Texas with late details.
After a withering critique of the police response in Uvalde, the mayor of this small Texas city is pushing back.
I actually want to know who the hell's in charge of this investigation because you can't get a straight answer.
Mayor Don McLaughlin demanding accountability and rejecting the notion that Uvalde's school and police department deserve the brunt of the blame for the slow response.
It pisses me off that I can't give you answers or can't get you answers.
Fiery words after more details emerged from DPS Director Stephen McCraw about what happened during the 74 minutes officers waited to take down the gunman.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor.
The mayor says he's furious over how difficult it's been to get answers, accusing some state agencies of leaks, lies, and misstated information.
Everybody in that hall needs to answer what went on in that hall. Not just Pete Arredondo, not just local Uvalde Police Department, but the U.S. Marshals need to answer, the Border Patrol needs to answer, the DPS needs to answer.
Despite public records requests, 911 audio recordings, police body cameras, and surveillance footage have not been released. Today, State Senator Roland Gutierrez announcing a lawsuit accusing DPS of trying to disallow access to information that might shed light on the complete failure of the response. One of the errors, investigators say, communication. A responding police officer was detained and his weapon confiscated as he tried to save his dying wife, Eva Morales. A teacher inside, she never made it out. And still under scrutiny, school police chief Pete Arredondo, absent from a city council meeting last night.
I make a motion we do not grant the leave of absence for Councilman Arredondo.
The room erupting in cheers at the prospect that 3 straight absences could allow the body to replace him.
And Sam Brock joins us now live from Austin. Sam, let's turn back to the breaking news about Police Chief Arredondo being placed on administrative leave. What more can you tell us?
So, Gabe, this is definitely a U-turn for the Uvalde School District. The superintendent says initially they were going to wait for the investigation to finish before doing any sort of personnel moves. But because of the lack of clarity here and unknown timing on when that would happen, the superintendent said he just made the decision that Pete Arredondo is now on administrative leave effective immediately, Gabe.
Sam Brock, live for us in Austin with a breaking development. Sam, thank you. Now, we turn overseas to the deadly earthquake in Afghanistan, shaking the nation at its most vulnerable and killing more than 1,000 people. Hospitals are filling up as rescue workers rush to recover the wounded. Matt Bradley has the latest.
Tonight, Afghanistan recovers its dead and searches for its wounded after violent tremors shook this troubled nation, killing more than 1,000 people, according to Taliban officials. Rescue workers are now rushing to save more than 1,500 injured as hospitals are filling up. The 5.9 magnitude quake in the country's southeastern Paktika province was felt as far away as Kabul, the country's capital, and even neighboring Pakistan. It was too dangerous, said Habibullah. We left home immediately. A lot of people were injured. Today's fresh tragedy strikes Afghanistan at its most vulnerable and leaves the ruling Taliban begging for international aid. The group has been in power for less than a year after America's chaotic withdrawal. The country's finances have already been gutted by war, banking sanctions, and aid cuts. Local officials warn casualties are expected to rise even further. Hundreds of bodies may remain trapped in destroyed buildings and underneath landslides. Why has a 5.9 on the Richter scale caused this level of damage and destruction?
The reason is the area that we're talking about here is an impoverished area. It is a sort of village type of an area. A lot of the structures there are made of earth and wood, not particularly structurally resilient buildings in this part of the world.
Still more sorrow for a nation that's familiar with tragedy. Taliban are the only legitimate government on the ground there right now. And from my understanding, talking to aid workers and other international organizations, they've been saying that the Taliban has been spearheading the rescue and search effort for dead bodies and for injured people who are in this region. And there are very, very many of them. And I really think the thing to watch here, Gabe, is whether or not Western governments and international aid organizations decide to cast politics aside and to partner and participate with the Taliban in saving the Afghan people. Gabe?
Matt, thank you. Back here now, on just the second day of summer, much of the country is in the grip of a dangerous heat wave. 42 million people under heat alerts across 16 states, with historic highs possible, especially across the South. Kathy Park reports from a sweltering Jacksonville, Florida.
The first week of summer shattering records as an unrelenting heat wave pushes into the southeast. Parts of Florida forecast to hit their first 100-degree day in 3 years.
I'm trying to survive the heat.
The same heat dome that buckled roads in Chicago killed thousands of cattle in Kansas. The extreme heat also contributing to the death of a 5-year-old in Houston, left in a hot car for hours. The frequency of heat waves setting off a new federal framework to protect workers from the hazards of heat exposure. Expanded OSHA guidelines include building a tolerance to heat, drinking a cup of cool water every 15 minutes, with mandatory breaks in the shade to recover.
We are going to be doing proactive inspections in over 70 industries that we've identified where we have a high number of heat-related illnesses and fatalities.
How much harder is your work under these types of conditions?
Oh, it's real hard. This is hot. This is hot. You got to take it easy, pace yourself.
At the University of North Florida, researchers are studying hotspots to set a baseline to shape future public health strategies.
By midday here in Jacksonville, you can see on this thermal camera surface temperatures soaring to dangerous levels, like right here in this parking lot where there's absolutely no shade.
And experts say this offers a snapshot of disparities fueled by heat.
In the higher income neighborhoods, you tend to have houses that are further apart, buildings that are further apart, and more tree coverage. In lower income neighborhoods, you have less tree coverage, and you have buildings that are closer together. And so that helps trap heat.
The heat heightening risks as the summer offers a preview of our new normal.
Now, Florida is used to hot weather during the summer months, but forecasters are saying that we are reaching record-breaking territory this week because there is a drier air mass settling in, pushing temperatures toward the century mark. Gabe?
Kathy Park in Jacksonville. Kathy, thank you. For more on this dangerous heat, I want to bring in NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, heading into the end of the week, where are those hot spots?
Hi there, Gabe. Well, it looks like this pattern just won't change. We are stuck in this stubborn pattern with this heat dome stuck in place. And we're looking at heat alerts all throughout the south. And the heat is extended beyond that from the southwest to the southeast through the plains as well. So we're going to see days of 90s and 100s. You factor in the humidity, it's going to feel like 110 in some spots. So this is where the alerts are for tomorrow. We're looking at much of the south under a heat alert. It's going to stay steamy, Gabe, as we head throughout the next couple of days. Look at some of these temperatures. 100 degrees in Shreveport. It's going to feel like 105 once you factor in that humidity. Feeling like 108 in Mobile, 102 in Atlanta. It's going to feel like 104 in Tallahassee. That is the same story on Friday. So we're ending our work week very steamy as well. Feeling like 106 in Houston and Jacksonville, Florida. You're going to feel like 111 on Friday. Now we're going to get a little relief over the weekend. I say a little because we're still stuck in the 80s and 90s, but Jacksonville doing better by Sunday with temperatures in the upper 80s, 91 degrees by Monday. But back to the west, we're looking at the south central states in Dallas staying warm with temperatures in the hundreds on Sunday, 95 by Monday. So a summer scorcher, this is what we're expecting tomorrow. It's been excessive. We've broken so many records over the past few weeks, and we're going to continue to do that over the next couple of days. So 210 million highs above 90 degrees, stretching from the southwest through the plains into the southeast. Now, some of this heat and humidity is sparking some storms tonight. We're looking at some stormy weather in parts of the mid-Atlantic and also in the northeast. Gabe, you can see lots of lightning and also some heavy rain. This is going to lead to localized flooding. Back to you.
Michelle, a lot to watch for. 111 degrees, the feel-like temperature later this week in Jacksonville. That's hot even for Florida. Michelle, thank you. Turning now to some new reporting from the Wall Street Journal. The FDA poised to ban Jewel e-cigarettes in the U.S. The administration, which has not made the official announcement, gearing up to remove all Jewel Labs products from stores and gas stations nationwide. The news coming as the Biden administration signals it will establish a maximum nicotine level. Miguel Almaguer has the latest.
It could permanently extinguish one of the largest e-cigarette companies in the nation. Tonight, the FDA poised to order Jewel Labs to take its products off the U.S. market, according to the Wall Street Journal, citing people familiar with the matter. The potential decision, which has not been officially confirmed, comes after a nearly 2-year review of data provided by Jewel, who sought to keep its smoking products on store shelves.
We certainly think Jewel has played a large role in the e-cigarette epidemic. Its aggressive marketing and advertising to youth using a lot of the throwbacks that big tobacco used.
With uncertainty clouding Jewel for years, the company came under FDA scrutiny after it was accused of trying to hook kids on its fruity and sweet flavors. Those choices, often promoted by a marketing campaign, is why Max Thor says he started smoking Jewel when he was 17.
I think it was just irresponsible in the way that these companies were developing flavors that were, pretty much like analogous to like candy.
In 2019, Jewel stopped selling sweet and fruity e-cigarette cartridges, but similarly flavored disposable vaporizers from other brands are still available at stores nationwide.
As the Food and Drug Administration also proposes a plan to reduce the level of nicotine in cigarettes, tonight no comment from Jewel, which has previously denied marketing to children. For its part, the FDA continues to review data from e-cigarette companies who want to stay in the market, a future for some that could go up in smoke.
The Wall Street Journal says the FDA's announcement is expected at any hour, but for its part, the agency will only say, for now, no comment. Gabe?
Miguel, thank you. Still ahead tonight, Gabby's lawsuit. The legal battle between the parents of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie heads to court. The allegations from Petito's family that the Laundries helped their son cover up a murder. Plus, growing outrage over a caught on-camera attack in China. A violent mob beating 3 women as they dined at a restaurant. The public now fearing the victims are being silenced. And the woman held hostage in New York, how she managed to get help using a Grubhub delivery order. Stay with us. We're back tonight with the Gabby Petito saga finally seeing a courtroom in a civil proceeding. Gabby's parents suing the family of her presumed killer, Brian Laundrie, alleging they knew about the murder and tried to help him flee justice. NBC's Stephen Romo has more.
Tonight, the legal battle between the families of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie on display for the first time in a Florida civil courtroom.
They knew starting on August 28th of 2021 that Gabby was dead. They knew where Gabby's body was. They knew that the Petito family was desperately searching for information.
Laundrie's parents, Chris and Roberta, noticeably absent from court, their attorneys saying they had no responsibility to speak up about their son's actions.
The law imposes no such obligation to speak, and the state and federal constitutions support that. In our society, under our laws, people are free not to speak.
The Petito family suing the Laundries for damages in excess of $30,000 for what amounts to the intentional infliction of emotional suffering.
Infliction of emotional distress is generally unofficially considered one of the weaker causes of action. It usually appears at the end of a list of much stronger causes of action in a complaint. Almost, it's considered an afterthought. Why? Because it's really hard to prove.
Petito was killed by strangulation in August 2021, according to authorities, while she and her fiancé, Laundrie, were traveling together across the United States. They documented their journey on social media along the way.
Gabby Petito never goes outside.
Laundrie returned home from the road trip on September 1st without Gabby, then disappeared himself. The search for both captivating the nation.
And we're also following these new developments in the growing search for a 22-year-old named Gabby Petito. She vanished during a cross-country road trip with her fiancé.
In October, about a month after Gabby's remains were found, Brian Laundrie's body was discovered in a nature preserve not far from his parents' Florida home, along with writings in a notebook that claimed responsibility for killing Petito. The Petito family has been vocal about their distrust of the Laundries.
Anyone that lived in that house is a coward.
and they don't know how to stand up for their actions.
I think silence speaks volumes.
Their silence explained by their attorney, Steve Bertolino, on Top Story.
We've heard from so many people over the last several weeks on this case, but we've never heard from the Laundries, and there's a reason for that, correct?
Absolutely, and I've said several times, I said it over a month ago, the reason you haven't heard from the Laundries is because I told them not to talk to anybody.
The hearing today will determine if a lawsuit brought on by Petito's parents against Laundrie's parents will proceed to a jury trial next year. The lawsuit alleges Laundrie's parents were aware their son murdered Petito, knew where her body was located, and chose not to act.
They had the audacity to express a hope that she would be reunited with her family.
The essential thrust of the facts alleged by the plaintiffs is that the Laundries were just silent. To allow this case to go forward, a judge would have to conclude that mere silence can be extreme and outrageous behavior, and even when that silence may be in assertion of one's Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. That is not a good decision for a judge to have to make.
And Stephen Romo joins Top Story Now live. Now, Stephen, Laundrie's parents have been the focus of so much attention, but they were not in court today. How are they responding?
Yeah, so much media scrutiny and scrutiny from their neighbors just asking them for information. We did hear from their attorney today, even though they weren't in court, basically saying the same thing they said back in March when they filed to dismiss this civil case, that they have constitutional rights to not speak out about what's going on and about what their son may or may not have been doing at the time. We do know that the judge is supposed to make a decision on this case coming up in about 2 weeks to see if the civil case will actually move forward, and it'll be up to them then if they're going to actually be present in the courtroom at that time. Okay.
Stephen Romo, thanks so much for staying on top of this for us. Stephen, thanks. Overseas now to China, where a violent beating caught on camera has sent shockwaves across the country. Surveillance footage showing a group of men brutally attacking multiple women at a restaurant, sending 2 of them to the hospital. But those victims have since gone silent, renewing the debate over free speech in China. Janice Mackey-Freyer is in Beijing.
The early hours of June 10th, a security camera video at a restaurant shows a man approaching 3 women. When he touches one of them, she shakes him off, and he slaps her. What happens next is brutal. A mob beating her and the other women. Bystanders appear to do little to stop it. She's dragged outside by the hair, and when her friend tries to help, her head hits the step with a thump. The savage attack left 2 women hospitalized and sparked outrage across Chinese social media about gender-based violence here and how often it happens in plain view. More women are using their voices, says activist Feng Yuan, but our voices need to be heard, which is very hard. For over a week, women have flooded messaging platforms. Hashtags about the topic on Weibo alone have been viewed nearly 5 billion times. And other videos have quickly surfaced. According to police, this one shows a brawl in Huizhou after a woman there was beaten.
In a way, the rise of women's rights consciousness in China is quite rapid, faster than a lot of other countries. So I think that kind of the feeling of threat from men is especially acute.
But feminism is a divisive topic here. State media coverage has downplayed gender as the cause, instead linking the Tangshan attack to organized crime. Government censors pulled down the video, and Weibo yanked more than 900 accounts for violations, including gender confrontation. Police made 9 arrests and rolled out what was billed as a thunderstorm campaign to assure residents it was safe to eat out again. Tangshan was even dropped from China's honorary list of, quote, civilized cities. Yet in all the fallout and discussion, what's missing is the women. Nearly 2 weeks after the attack, they haven't been seen or heard from, and no relatives have spoken out, stirring concerns and more questions here around what's being called an epidemic of violence against women. Authorities here just released a report that reveals the condition of two of the women was far more serious than first acknowledged, that they spent time in intensive care, even after police described their injuries as minor. Officials did not respond to our request for more details about the women, their families, or their ensuing silence about an attack that has so many others talking. Gabe?
Janice Mackey-Freyer in Beijing for us. Janice, thanks. When we come back, pulled from the flames, a family trapped inside a burning mobile home. The moment first responders broke through a window to save a young child. The new video next. Now to Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the deadly shooting on a San Francisco Muni train. Police say a gunman opened fire on the train just before 10 this morning. At least one person killed and another injured. Police are still searching for the suspect, but say the shooting does appear to be an isolated incident. So far, no word on a motive. A New York woman rescued from a hostage situation after sending a note through Grubhub. The 24-year-old victim writing in part, "Please call police," in the additional instructions section of an order to a Bronx restaurant. Police arrived at the home and arrested her alleged captor. He's now facing several charges, including rape, strangulation, and unlawful imprisonment. He's also the suspect in the rape of another woman just last week. Now to the dramatic moment. First responders pulled a 3-year-old boy from a burning mobile home. Body camera video shows a firefighter breaking into this home outside Milwaukee. He then climbs through the window, handing the boy to police outside. Just remarkable. That boy rushed to the hospital where he's still on a ventilator, but is expected to be okay. It's still unclear what started that fire. Turning now to Louisiana, where government officials have signed into law limitations on solitary confinement for juveniles in a historic move. This comes after a report NBC shared back in March, an investigation in partnership with ProPublica and the Marshall Project, which exposed the conditions of one juvenile facility. NBC's Zincle Esamoah has the story.
Louisiana's governor signed the state's first law restricting the use of solitary confinement in juvenile facilities. The move comes after 2 suicides and an investigation by NBC News, ProPublica, and the Marshall Project that revealed harsh conditions in a juvenile lockup, which critics said violated the civil rights of minors.
He's basically being housed like a death row inmate.
The March report highlighted the environment at the Acadiana Center for Youth at St. Martinville, according to the state's Office of Juvenile Justice incident reports and firsthand accounts.
The 24-cell juvenile facility held minors in cells for 23 or at times 24 hours a day, subdued teens with police-style maneuvers, and at times held minors in shackles or what the facility calls leg irons outside their cells.
Right now he's been in 24-hour solitary.
Like Ben, who was sentenced to state custody in 2020 and moved to St. Martinville in December when he was 16.
Do you have access to school right now?
No, ma'am.
Even worksheets? Nothing to do at all? No school at all?
Sometimes, like, I only got them once.
There are no teachers? You haven't seen any teachers there?
No.
His mother telling our investigative team earlier this year.
And he would be crying. And my son is not that type of person, so I knew something was up. They treat him like dogs.
Critics called it a child prison. One expert said the conditions amounted to, quote, child abuse. A former St. Martinville staff member whose identity has been concealed over fear of repercussions for future jobs detailed her experiences.
A lot of them lack basic respect. They treat those kids like crap.
The OJJ denied all allegations other than a lack of education. Last December, it called the facility a temporary fix for youth who are not, quote, therapy ready.
We don't have the facilities nor the manpower to hold them in those dormitory settings.
But during hearings about this new law, Summers acknowledged the state needed to make changes in solitary confinement.
This is the right thing to do here.
Now, the new legislation goes into effect August 1st and marks a turning point in a state criminal justice advocates call the world's incarceration capital. State Representative Royce Duplessis, a Democrat and the bill's sponsor, told NBC News our team's investigation made a difference.
Had it not been for that story, we don't know if we would have ever learned about. It opened the conversation and shined a light on this issue that led to the bill being filed.
Changes will include limiting young people to no more than 8 hours in solitary unless they continue to pose a physical threat to themselves or others. The agency will also be required to check on youth's mental health within the first few hours of placing them into solitary confinement and notifying their parents or guardians. A change welcomed by advocates for juveniles held in facilities like the one at St. Martinville. Zinclea Samoa, NBC News.
Now to the breaking headline out of the sports world. The new allegations against Washington's football team and its workplace culture. Congress announcing the results of its own investigation and putting the NFL commissioner on the hot seat.
Shorter or what? I do think our intern is looking better every day.
In this video clip, a Washington broadcaster makes inappropriate comments about an intern. Today, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, testifying remotely, called them unacceptable, saying the team's culture was toxic for far too long.
Bullying, widespread disrespect toward colleagues, use of demeaning language, public embarrassment, and harassment.
The U.S. House Oversight Committee also alleges that Washington Commanders owner Daniel Snyder conducted a shadow investigation in an attempt to discredit his accusers. Snyder declined to testify today, his lawyer saying he had a long-standing business conflict.
Apparently, Mr. Snyder is in France, where he has docked his luxury yacht near a resort town. That should tell you just how much respect he has for women in the workplace.
Goodell says a $10 million fine was imposed on the Commanders and that Snyder is no longer involved in day-to-day operations. But lawmakers also grilled Goodell on why the league did not publicly release the findings of an investigation it opened, citing witness privacy.
We made a commitment to protect their identities. We are going to continue to do that.
One who has come forward is Emily Applegate, who spoke with NBC News in 2020, saying she'd endured relentless sexual harassment and verbal abuse.
It breaks you down, and it's really hard to climb out of that.
Snyder has previously called the team's conduct unacceptable, but denied participating in any such conduct himself. A spokesperson for Snyder is calling the committee's investigation predetermined from the beginning and a politically charged show trial. Still, the committee is issuing a subpoena to compel Snyder's testimony at a deposition next week. Now, for more analysis on Roger Goodell's appearance and Dan Snyder's future in the league, Lindsay Jones, senior writer covering the NFL at The Athletic, joins us now. So, Lindsay, let's start with that 29-page memo the committee released today. What surprised you the most from that report?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was the public revelation of this dossier that Snyder's camp within the Washington franchise put together that really kind of indicated that he was conducting, or that team was conducting, their own kind of shadow investigation, had information on the journalists and on the witnesses, and really, to me, was an indication of kind of how Snyder was treating this whole thing, that, there was no kind of contrition or anything, that this was we're going to fight like heck about everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, so some of those allegations have been made public before, but it was that alleged shadow investigation that was new. Now, Lindsay, the NFL did its own investigation into the culture of the Washington football team, but did not produce a written report, just an oral briefing. So we touched on that a little bit in the report, but how did Commissioner Goodell really explain that when he was grilled by lawmakers?
Yeah, I mean, he's really saying the same thing that he has been saying all along, dating back really to last fall, and then certainly again in February when we held his kind of State of the NFL press conference at the Super Bowl. And that was that the league requested that there not be a written report filed by Beth Wilkinson and then nothing be released in order to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the witnesses, of women and a handful of men who came forward. The problem with this statement is that we've heard directly from a number of these women, including some who have hand-delivered a letter to NFL owners requesting that this information be released. So my big question always is, who is the league protecting? Who is Goodell protecting here? If the women want this report released and it's not being released.
And my greetings there to your puppy in the background. But Goodell also told the committee that he did not have the authority to remove the Commanders owner, Snyder. But do you think among the other owners who Goodell reports to that the handwriting is on the wall and that they're hoping that Snyder sells?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that would probably be a best case scenario, right? If Dan Snyder decided that he had had enough and he decided to sell without the rest of the league having to force him out. The owners would have to, 24 of the 32 owners would have to vote for him to sell, to force him out. That has never happened before in league history. Jerry Richardson with the Panthers put his team up for sale before it ultimately got to a point where the other owners could vote him out. The cynical side of me here says that, until this becomes some sort of financial situation and there are too many sponsors that are pulling out, or there are financial improprieties that have been proven, that the other owners are going to kind of let this go. That when this is about workplace culture and sexual harassment and even sexual assault, that this isn't something that the other owners are really willing to get involved in. So Roger Goodell was correct when he said that he does not individually have the authority. If he really wanted to, though, he could bring this up to force the issue among other owners. But right now, there really isn't any indication that the other owners are particularly motivated to go on the record and take any sort of votes about Dan Snyder's status as the owner of the Washington Commanders.
And Lindsay, really quickly, I mentioned that Snyder is being subpoenaed to testify next week at a deposition. Do you think he'll show?
Well, this isn't voluntary like this most recent hearing was. I don't imagine, though, that he and his lawyers are going to see the subpoena and automatically say, yes, I'll show up, let's just go. But it'll be a little bit more difficult for him to wiggle his way out and head off to France.
Lindsay, thank you. It's officially summer, and Americans are gearing up to get out. AAA predicts nearly 48 million people will travel over the July 4th weekend, despite rampant inflation and logistical chaos. Emily Ikeda shares what you should know.
Historically high gas prices won't put travelers in park this summer, with record numbers of Americans set to hit the road over the July 4th holiday, amid a summer travel boom just shy of pre-pandemic levels.
So we're actually going to Vegas because it's going to be my birthday. So we're going to drive there, actually. Even with the gas prices being so high, we're still going to make the trip out.
Across the board, travel is more expensive, but bookings are still on the rise, up more than 60% at top Independence Day destinations.
What does that say about people's excitement to get out and explore?
People are not willing to give up the respite that they deserve. They're willing to cut corners different ways.
While 3.5 million are anticipated to take to the skies, this Independence Day will mark the smallest share of people in the air since 2011. AAA says the recent turmoil in the terminal could be to blame.
It was a real bad experience, to be honest.
This father of two is reconsidering his summer plans after last weekend's flight disruptions.
I'm not going to wait in the plane almost 2 hours, sweating and people screaming, and it's frustrating.
But even close to home, sky-high prices are seemingly unavoidable this July 4th, with the cost of a cookout spiking 11%. To help rein in runaway inflation, try replacing traditional cookout staples with shrimp and pork tacos and non-dairy desserts.
I wouldn't make a huge dish to bring. I would maybe do an appetizer, just, keep it simple.
Americans determined to celebrate summer despite steeper costs. Emily Ikeda, NBC News, New York.
Turning now to news making major waves. Sharks, once believed to avoid humans, are now spending more time along populated coastlines. They may even be attracted to areas where food is more easily accessible. NBC News senior national correspondent Carrie Sanders has more.
With beach season officially in full swing this morning, new findings on the ocean's most feared predators. Contrary to what shark experts first believed, researchers at the University of Miami Rosenstiel School have discovered sharks are surprisingly spending more time closer to populated coastlines. Shark! While researchers did not specifically track great whites like Bruce, they did follow some of his blood brothers, great hammerheads, bull sharks, and nurse sharks.
I was literally shocked to find out that not only were the 3 different species of sharks coming to these areas, but they're spending some considerable time there, some of them for months.
The unexpected findings come after years of shark tracking off the Miami coast. We were there with Dr. Neil Hammerschlag and his team in 2020 as they tagged the city-dwelling swimmers.
On days with the highest boat activity, which were holidays like July 4th or during weekends, the sharks' habitat use was pretty much the same as it was during weekdays or times where there was no boat activity.
So it's like an interstate and the sharks are just fine with it.
It might be because they're just so used to it.
The study also identifying potential shark hotspots, areas where sharks were attracted by sewage runoff, discarded fish carcasses, and even fish parts from the nearby Miami Seaquarium, all easy food sources for sharks.
You think of humans in big cities snacking on fast food. It looks like the sharks are doing that too. We're seeing some of those nurse sharks actually get a bit fatter, wider.
Even bright lights above the surface are attracting the ferocious fish. Something Dr. Hammerschlag pointed out during our dive.
Actually on an airplane flying over Miami at night. Everything was lit up by city lights, and it made me think about how there's really nowhere where an animal could escape the urbanization.
Are those lights drawing sharks, scaring sharks away? Any impact?
I think that basically the lights might attract small little bait fish, which attract bigger fish, which attract sharks that are out hunting for those fish.
The research pointing to the impact even landlubbers have under the sea.
Whether it's through noise pollution, light pollution, chemical pollution, fishing, that's going to have an impact on the local shark population. So I think we got to think about being good neighbors.
Now, it might be easy to think that this research means that there will be more shark bites, but understand, scientists didn't know that sharks were so close to urban environments, but they've always been there. So there's no real reason to conclude there will be more shark attacks than there were before.
Carrie Sanders, thank you. Coming up, violent protests in Ecuador, thousands taking to the streets, and the attack on a police station. Back now with Top Stories Global Watch and the deadly flooding in Southeast Asia. In Bangladesh, military personnel airdropping supplies to residents trapped in the floodwaters. Residents struggling to access food and clean water. Dozens killed and more than 4 million people are displaced there. Next to the deadly protests in Ecuador, new video shows violent clashes between demonstrators and riot police in Quito. 10,000 indigenous people marching through the capital city to protest the government's economic and social policies. Police say nearly 20 officers in Puyo are missing after a police station there was attacked. Now, when we come back, lost letters. The woman receiving a postcard from her parents' honeymoon years after they died. That incredible story next. Finally tonight, postcards from the past mysteriously arriving in 2 women's mailboxes decades after they were sent. And that's not the most surprising part. Carol Hoover thought she was left only with memories after her parents passed away.
A lot of happy years. A lot of happy years. And I miss them dearly.
She was wrong.
It was like any other day.
As she went through her mail, a familiar sight caught her eye.
The first thing I saw was my mother's handwriting. And it's very recognizable. And I was like, wait a minute, how can this be? She passed away 8 years ago.
It was a postcard from her parents' honeymoon in 1980, addressed to her grandparents. Overjoyed with this surprise, Hoover went to her local post office.
She says, oh, wait, I've got 2 more in the back.
A postcard from Hoover's aunt and uncle from their trip to England in 1974. Another from her father from New York City in 1969.
To see my father's handwriting, that was wonderful. And, maybe deep down, I want to think it's maybe them giving a nod that, they're still close by. And, I like to think that.
And parcels from the past kept coming.
About a week and a half later, I got another one in the mail from my aunt and uncle, and that was from France.
The mystery mail became a family affair. Hoover's cousin in Illinois hearing from the people who lived in her old home, saying they had something she needed to see.
I couldn't believe that our former family home in Minnesota was now getting old postcards. Like, this is crazy.
A postcard had turned up from a family friend in Ireland sent in 1983. One from family visiting Scotland in 1984. Another from her parents in Fiji in 1981.
It's a wonderful touch through time to my beloved family, who are all these people who have written these cards are passed away.
Conky says her family didn't travel much, so they would have remembered getting a postcard. She hasn't bought any of the theories she's heard so far. A USPS spokesperson offered a few explanations, including the possibility of the mail being found and deposited in one of their collection boxes. Hoover thinks there's more to the story.
We can't figure it out.
How can this happen with not a special envelope or some explanation?
Regardless of the path it took, these cousins are grateful for the bit of magic they got in their mailbox, arriving alongside moments of family joy and tragedy.
The first one I got 2 days after their first great-grandchild was born. My uncle, Jerry Bash, who was on 2 of the postcards, he just passed away a couple weeks ago. I think they came at a good time for whatever reason, because it was just something that lightened the load. And it just, everybody that's seen them, it's just a good feeling. And, everybody needs a little good news right now.
Everybody does need some good news right now. Ain't that the truth? Thanks so much for watching Top Story. For Tom Llamas, I'm Gabe Gutierrez in New York. Stay right there. More news is on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.